Hello again. My name is Justin Stevens. Welcome to Life is Hard. I want to start by thanking every one of you for being here. This project has been a long time in the making, so thank you for being a part of this journey with me. I graduated from the Florida State University in 2012 with a degree in psychology and child development. From graduation, I began working in the social work field with kids who experienced abuse, abandonment, neglect, and mental health concerns. During that time, I also taught parenting classes based on behavioral modification tactics. However, I do none of those things today. After a few years of doing that work, I decided that I need to take a break. And now I work for Liberty Mutual Insurance as a claims adjuster. But today, we are going to be discussing a topic that is, like I said, near and dear to my heart. I'm going to be sharing a lot of personal things about myself, some things that I haven't even told many people. So you're going to be learning a lot about me in our time together. The first thing that I want you to learn is that I am not a mental health professional. I do not claim to be an expert on the topics that we're going to be discussing today. I am going to be sharing some facts. I am going to be sharing my opinions on some things, some resources that are available, and then of course, some of my own personal stories for you guys. So before we get started, I do want to start with some caution. So for your safety, there's going to be some really hard discussions that are had today. There will be some discussion that involves suicide, sexual assault, abuse, some strong language will be used. So if you need a moment to step away and take a break, please do so. If you or someone you know is in need of help, please speak with someone about it today. And the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is listed here. They provide 24/7 free and confidential support for those in distress. And that number is located right at the bottom, 1-800-273-TALK. That is 1-800-273-8255. At Liberty Mutual, we like to start conversations like these with our guidelines for inclusion. These are 9 principles that we use to kind of make having these conversations a little bit more impactful and effective. For the purposes of today, I'd like to point out a few of them. The first one is practice both and thinking. This is the idea of managing multiple perspectives, so using and rather than but. So for example, this one thing could happen over here, and at the exact same time, this other thing could also be happening. So this could be my experience, and these could be your experience, and both of those things can be true. This can be right, and this can be right. More than one way is possible. I'd also like to call out try on. That is about considering another person's thoughts, feelings, or actions in order to better understand their story fully. And the last one I want to call out is it's okay to disagree. So some of the things that I say today are going to be facts. Some of them are going to be opinions. You may not agree, and that is fine. We can disagree without being disagreeable. Throughout this presentation, I'm going to ask that you guys participate with me. Normally, we'd be in person with each other and we could have a discussion. But since we're in this virtual setting, we're going to be using Mentimeter. So if you could, right now, either on your phone or on your computer, go to menti.com. That's MENTI.com and enter the code that you see here. It's 8336370. Again, that's 8336370. And we are going to try a little practice run just to make sure we're all familiar with how to use it. So first question of the day, who is your favorite female singer? Share, Alicia Keys. Yes, Beehive is here. I see Beyonce, Whitney Houston, Lady Gaga. Awesome, great. So everybody is comfortable with using this. We're going to be using this throughout the presentation. So if you want, you can just go ahead and leave Mentimeter open because we're going to be using this a lot today. Before we get into anything, I'm going to start off with one of my favorite spoken word piece. It's a piece called Friends with Benefits, and this young woman talks about her experience with anxiety being her friend with benefits.
So, my anxiety and I have what some people might call a friends with benefits relationship. We have no love for each other, but she still just like fucks with me sometimes, you know? We moved in together some years ago. We have inside jokes. Like when I say, I'm gonna go talk to that person over there, my anxiety looks at me and is like, bitch, please. My anxiety is the reason I didn't talk to you. She's possessive. She doesn't like me talking to other people. She's irrational. Because of her, I'll take the long way to my building to avoid someone I already passed by twice because I don't know if it's acceptable to say hey a third time. Because of her. I don't correct people at restaurants who get my order wrong. I just eat it. Because you know, maybe sweet potato fries are what I wanted, but the broccoli you gave me is what I needed. Thank you. Because of her. I take the long way to my building to avoid someone who kind of looked like my ex-boyfriend. Because whenever I hand her the aux cord, she makes sure to play back all the times he told me no one else would ever want me. Because of her, I still think no one else will ever want me. I constantly wonder, what happens to a black girl who is too anxious to ever feel like magic? Can she still fly? Can she still be fly with wings that tremble? Can she forget the lifestyle of an ant, that feeling that no matter what she does, she is in danger of being crushed? And my anxiety doesn't like to be made into metaphors, but what I'm trying to say is she is constantly reminding me of how easy I am to crush. As I speak, I am pushing against her weight on my shoulders, and that is why I shake sometimes. I have to fight to stand up straight, stop rocking. She and I picked out this outfit together. Something that dries fast. If I am sweating, it is because doing this poem feels like fighting a boxing match that you can't even see, and I am determined to knock her out. I have been fighting her for control of our house for years, fighting not to crack, stop rocking, don't shake, breathe. I think the reason my relationships don't work out is because no one knows they're signing up for a threesome. I understand. I know how hard it is to live with both of us when we don't like feeling out of control, when we don't handle conflict well, when we don't handle being yelled at well, when everything you say to us will be repeated and deconstructed and analyzed in our head a million times after, and if I am silent for a while, it is because I have to fight with her before I can fight with you. I've tried to cut her off before. I cannot. We do not handle separation well because of our parents, our ex, our friends. Breathe. So I guess my anxiety and I have just learned to live together. She's the longest relationship I have ever had, and as everyone leaves, she is the only relationship that I can count on.
Alrighty, time for our first real Menti question. So what comes to mind when you hear mental health? And remember, this is at menti.com, and you can use the code 8336370. And while you're taking the time to answer that question, I want to share with you my favorite part of that spoken word piece. And it's when she says, I know how hard it is to live with both of us, when we don't like feeling out of control, when we don't handle conflict well, We don't handle being yelled at well when everything you say will be repeated and deconstructed and analyzed in our head a million times after. And if I am silent for a while, it is because I have to fight with her before I can fight with you. The second thing I want you to learn about me today is I know these feelings. I have been there many a times before, so I get it. And again, I'm not a mental health expert, but I am a trauma survivor. I won't have a traditional Q&A section in this conversation because I am not a mental health professional. However, my contact information will be available at the end if there is something that sparks an idea or thought in your head and you'd like to continue this conversation outside of here. So we've got depression, which of course we will be touching on today, anxiety, the stigmas that come with mental health, suicide, vulnerability, feeling overwhelmed, self-care we'll touch on, family, coping skills, all of these things. All of these things we will talk about today. So um, let me let you know how this is going to work. We're going to take this in 3 parts. The first part is life is hard and you're not alone. In that section, we are going to talk about how common mental health is. We're going to look at some statistics from a general population standpoint, and then we are going to narrow in on how mental health is disproportionately affecting different demographics within our community and some factors that contribute to that. The second stage is life is hard and it gets better, but as you can see, the it gets better part is crossed out, not because it doesn't get better, but sometimes it doesn't for some people, and that's a conversation that we need to have as well. The third and final stage is life is hard and that's okay. During this time, we're going to share some stories, some experiences, and hopefully some lessons. So from the top, who does deal with mental health? Short answer, it's all of us. All of us on some spectrum have been affected by mental health, whether it is something that we are dealing with on our own or whether this is a conversation or an experience that we deal with through somebody that we know. But here are a couple of examples. Meet Steve Young. Steve Young was a quarterback in the NFL for 15 seasons, played for the San Francisco 49ers, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the LA Express of the US Football League. Steve once said, "I feel like an uninvited guest at a house party when I walk onto the field. It's our first home game since Joe was traded to Kansas City, and fans hang support for Joe all over the stadium. I read each one. I know that there are no signs supporting me. Suck it up, I tell myself, and I start by completing 6 of my first 7 passes." Steve Young was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder. Meet Chrissy Teigen, model, television personality, author. She once said, "I have everything I needed to be happy, and yet for much of the last year, I felt unhappy. What basically everyone around me but me knew up until December was this: I have postpartum depression. I want people to know it can happen to anybody, and I don't want people who have it to feel embarrassed or to feel alone." Meet Dan Reynolds, singer from the band Imagine Dragons. He once said, "We were on this little jet and it was just really going crazy. It was the scariest experience I had on a plane, but I was totally, I don't know if at peace is the word. I just thought, man, if I die right now, I don't care." He was diagnosed with clinical depression. And meet Kristen Bell, actress, singer, producer. She once said, "For me, depression is not sadness. It's not having a bad day and needing a hug. It gave me a complete and utter sense of isolation and loneliness. Its debilitation was all consuming and it shut down my mental circuit board. I felt worthless, like I had nothing to offer, like I was a failure." Now, you might be saying, these are all very rich people, very famous people who have very different lives than the one that I lead. And that might be true. And you might be thinking, I'm just a regular person. So let's talk about some regular people. Let's meet Natasha. a quote unquote regular woman who once said, I had just been unfairly let go of my job and seeking legal advice. I was drowning in debt, going through the aftermaths of a breakup, and I was recovering from an abortion late last year. I was spiraling into a habit of self-destructive behaviors, and there wasn't a day that went by where I did not think about ending my life. The icing on the cake, we now had to stay home, all of us, alone due to COVID. And finally, meet Giles, a quote unquote regular man. He once said, now I may hear different voices, auditory hallucinations as they're called, but these are really far more troubling for me than they would be for you. Interestingly, hearing voices is surprisingly common. Around 1 in 10 people experience them. Some can be benign, although mine, unfortunately, are anything but. Can you imagine experiencing a considerable amount of sound that is a blurred existence of reality and fiction, impossible to differentiate? So let's look at the numbers. 19.1% of US adults experience mental illness each year. This is 1 in 5. 4.6 US adults experience serious mental illness each year. And when we're talking about a serious mental illness, that is a diagnosable mental behavior or emotional disorder other than a substance abuse disorder, other than a developmental disorder that substantially interferes with a major life activity. So for example, if you have a physical limitation or a physical disability or injury, things that might be impacted are seeing, walking, hearing, standing up for long times, sitting down for long times. When it comes to mental health, the major life activities that might be impaired include sleeping, concentrating, thinking, communicating, interacting with others, eating, taking care of yourself, regulating your thoughts, regulating your emotions. So that's 1 in 25 US adults experience one of these serious mental illnesses each year. And then finally, 16.5% of our youth aged 6 through 17 experience a mental health disorder each year. So let's talk about how this differs for different demographic groups, specific demographic groups. Historical dehumanization, oppression, and violence against Black and African American people has evolved into what we now see as present day racism. And this racism is structural, it's institutional, it's individual, and it cultivates this mistrustful, less affluent community experience characterized by a bunch of inequities and disparities. So take that and process that with layers of individual trauma that are popping up on a daily basis. So the uncertainties from COVID, the isolation from COVID, the grief from COVID, whether that be financial or a human loss, compounded with police brutality, compounded with divisive political rhetoric. It's a lot. So these numbers make sense. And even though we see these numbers, 4 in 25 Black and African American people experiencing mental illness each year, and of those 4, at least one of them experiencing a serious mental illness, only 30% of Black and African American people are seeking the treatment that is needed. And then when it comes to LGBT mental health, lesbian, gay, and bisexual adults are 2 times as likely as heterosexual adults to experience a mental health condition. And our transgender folks are nearly 4 times as likely as cisgenders to experience a mental health condition. And yet still people are not seeking the treatment they need. In terms of intersectionality, it's very difficult to find the numbers related to Black LGBT mental health. So a couple of things come to mind. Why aren't we seeking the treatment that we need? A couple of reasons here. Underrepresentation just being one of them. So less than 2% of American Psychological Association members are Black. Less than 2%. So some worry that not having a mental health practitioner who is able to relate to them will affect their recovery status. For example, if my trauma stems from seeing Black men and women killed by police on a weekly basis, I don't want to have to explain to somebody how that affects me. Retelling that story can be just as traumatic as living through it the first time. Then we have access to mental health services and the insurance to cover it. So Obamacare did some great things. It extended coverage to lots of people, but still there are some that are missed. 11.5% of Black and African Americans versus 7.5% of white Americans were still uninsured at the end of 2018. And then we've got cultural stigma. So within our community, mental health is taboo, and we often don't discuss it. And it's crazy because we identify the symptoms. We know when we're having trouble sleep. We can identify sleep pattern disruptions. We know what substance abuse looks like. We know what mood instability looks like. We know what overeating looks like, and the list goes on and on and on. But we don't want to call it mental health, and that's because of a couple of things. One being the fear of being labeled, the fear of being called crazy. Another is religion. Another reason for this is the fear of rejection. 40% of LGBT adults have experienced rejection from a family member or a close friend. And my hope is that with more conversations like the one we're having today, we'll be able to educate some people and kind of lift the veil that is surrounding mental health and get some serious conversations happening. So we are going to play a game, a quick little myth busting game. You're going to use Menti again for this one, and you've got very simple instructions. I will give you a statement. The statements will also pop up on the screen, and you just have to decide whether it is fact or fiction, and then we will talk about them. So the first one, people with mental illness are violent and dangerous. Fact or fiction? I already see some results coming in. Looks like everybody is in agreement with this one. This one is fiction. Within the last few years, the US has seen an increase in mass violence, right? So whenever these tragedies take place, you don't have to look far before you see somebody in the media quick to judge the suspects and label them as mentally disturbed or mentally ill. And in reality, hate is not a mental illness, right? The fact is that only 5% of violent crimes in the US are committed by people with serious mental illness. And unfortunately, the truth is that the individuals with mental illness are far more likely to be victims of the violence than the perpetrators. Next one. Psychiatric medications are bad, fact or fiction? Alrighty, see the answers coming in. A little bit of a mixed crowd. So many people tend to believe psychiatric medications are harmful. That or they believe that psych meds are simply happy pills or an easy way out for those dealing with mental illness to avoid those problems. Again, this is simply not true. Now, not saying that you should be on psychiatric medications your entire life, but they certainly help those who are in need of that help so that they can regulate their emotions and get through the day without having so many interruptions or impairments to their major life activity. Next, we have seeking help for mental illness will lead to being ostracized and make symptoms worse. Fact or fiction? I love seeing the results come in on this one because this one it's a little bit tricky. There is no right answer to this one. It depends. Because unfortunately, without a great support system, this can be true. as we know, there is a stigma that surrounds mental health. So without the right people in your life and the right safeguards, this could lead to you being ostracized and make those symptoms worse. But with a good support system, seeking mental illness can be great. Also, seeking mental health services, but also seeking out these services can help you identify the system to support you in your journey. I believe we got one more. Asking someone if they are thinking about suicide will put the idea in their head. Fact or fiction? Uh-oh, looks like the results aren't posting for this one, but we'll still talk about it. So this is a widespread myth about suicide, but oftentimes the opposite is true. Oftentimes, when someone is experiencing suicidal ideation, they'll be relieved to be presented with the opportunity to discuss these thoughts and process them with somebody, especially somebody that they care about, somebody that's in their support system. And as a support system, you could also help this person create a safety plan or an agreement against self-harm. So that they can, take the necessary stay calm measures that they need to when they need to. So that ends our myth-busting fact or fiction game. Mental health can be a really scary journey. And like I said earlier, sometimes it doesn't get better for some, and that is a conversation that we also need to have.
Hey guys.
He was just 9 years old and already had dreams of becoming a social media star. But last week, Jamel Miles took his own life.
He put smiles on my face every day.
His mother, Leah Pierce, says over the summer her son came out as gay. Even before that, she says he was bullied, but after his death, she learned the problem had only been getting worse.
My daughter told me he came home and told her kids at school were telling him to kill himself.
Denver Public Schools says it's investigating and is deeply committed to ensuring that all members of the school community are treated with dignity and respect. Jamel's death is evoking strong reactions. Actress Laverne Cox tweeted, "It must stop. Our bullying culture is killing children." Amit Paley is CEO of the Trevor Project, which focuses on crisis intervention and suicide prevention for LGBTQ youth.
We know that just one person in an LGBTQ young person's life can make a huge difference. They can reduce the risk of suicide by 30%.
According to a CDC report, gay, lesbian, and bisexual high school students are over 4 times more likely to attempt suicide than their straight peers.
And I wish I could have took the pain away from him.
Jamel's mother, clutching her son's favorite stuffed animal, says it's important to speak out.
He wanted to make people feel empowered. And in order to do that, we have to stop bullying and teach people it's okay to love each other.
She now hopes her son's death can help save other lives. Joe Fryer, NBC News.
Hey, NBC News fans, thanks for checking out.
Jamel Miles was 9 years old when he committed suicide after being bullied for coming out. Nigel Shelby, here in the middle, was 15 years old when he committed suicide after being bullied for being gay. And Channing Smith on the right was 16 years old when he committed suicide after being outed online. Please join me in taking a moment of silence for these young men. Thank you. Suicide is the second leading cause of death in America. So we know that this is an issue, but maybe we just don't know how to properly identify it. So here are some of the risk factors. We see mental health disorders on here. We see medical illness, family history, and these are just a few. We've also got some warning signs talking about wanting to die or wanting to kill themselves, risk-seeking or self-destructive behaviors, saying goodbye. And again, these are just some of them. Suicidal thoughts are not always, I want to die. They can also be these. For me, it was, no one cares if I'm alive. Okay, we have just gone through some pretty heavy stuff. You might be starting to feel the weight of it. I know I personally am. So to help with that, we are going to complete a grounding exercise together. So for those who are unfamiliar, grounding is an effective way to calm anxiety during a panic attack. It kind of brings you back to reality, helps you get grounded, if you will, in reality, and identify where you are and regain a sense of comfort. So today, we're going to use the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. So I want everybody to stop what they're doing, take some time, and I want you to find 5 things that you can see. 5 things that you can see. That could be me on your screen. Perhaps you're on a laptop or a computer so you can see your keyboard. Perhaps you're using Zoom on your phone so you see your phone. 5 things that you can see. Now identify 4 things that you can feel. Perhaps you've got a fan blowing or the AC on and you can feel the wind from that. Perhaps you are barefoot at home and you can feel the carpet in between your toes. Perhaps you feel the shirt on your skin. 4 things that you can feel. Now identify 3 things that you can hear. That can be the sound of my voice. Maybe it's kids playing outside. Again, maybe you've got a fan on or the AC, and you can hear the wind coming from that. Next, identify 2 things that you can smell. Perhaps you're wearing perfume or cologne. Maybe you've got scented lotion on. Maybe you've got a candle lit, or if you're like me, an essential oil diffuser going. 2 things that you can smell. Finally, identify 1 thing that you like about yourself. Again, the goal of this is to identify elements around the world, around you, to, again, ground you in reality, because sometimes our mind just takes us to places upon receiving information, and we need a way to come back. So we've talked about risk factors. We've talked about warning signs. We know how to identify it, but what do we do about it once we're able to identify it? By now, you've all heard of self-care, whether it's spontaneous self-care or scheduled, like self-care Sundays. There are, however, some misconceptions about what self-care actually is. So take a minute to browse through this list, and while you're doing that, I'm going to dispel some of those misconceptions. So you might hear that self-care is selfish or self-serving. And the truth of the matter is, when you make time for yourself and get sufficient rest, exercise, and you're mindful about the energy that you're spending, you have more of yourself to give to others. It's kind of like what they tell you when you get on an airplane. You have to put your own oxygen mask on first before you can help somebody else. You might hear that self-care is a one-time experience, and the truth is looking after yourself is an ongoing practice. It's continuance. It's ever evolving, ever changing, and it's helping you to build resilience to face hardships, and also helping you prevent burnout. And finally, you might hear that self-care is time-consuming, and browsing through this list, you can find that there are several things that you can do that don't take that much time, and you can do them, in little chunks throughout the day so that you're not taking a huge chunk of your time. It does not have to be time-consuming. There also exists resources in the community when you need them the most. So as we listened to on the video about Jamel Miles just a few minutes ago, the Trevor Project is a nonprofit organization focused on suicide prevention for LGBT youth under 25. They also provide guidance, resources for parents, educators, those looking to build a safe environment. And then you can also visit them at thetrevorproject.org. They've got a Trevor Lifeline, which is a toll-free confidential suicide hotline for LGBT young adults and youth. Then we see here therapyforblackmen.org, which is an organization that was created for men and boys of color who, as we talked about earlier, less than 2% of APA members are Black. So this was created for those who want to find somebody who looks like them. And yes, it's called therapyforblackmen.org, but it's not just for Black men. This is for all men and boys of color who are looking to speak to somebody who looks like them. And then again, we have the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. Another great place to find resources for mental health is with your employer. So I work at Liberty Mutual Insurance, and they offer a wide range of products, one being their Employee Assistance Program, or EAP. This offers free counseling sessions and a wide range of services at no cost. And I can personally attest to this. This is how I got started in therapy. I went on and requested my free sessions and started meeting with the therapist regularly for free. Liberty Mutual also offers an app called Mequilibrium, which is an online program that gives you tips, techniques, helps you stay calm, helps you stay more focused, helps you monitor your mood so that you can see where the trends lie. So I encourage you, check with your employer and see what benefits they have for you and your mental health. You can also talk to your primary care provider. You can walk into the emergency room if you need it, call a friend, or reach out to that National Suicide Prevention Lifeline if that's what you need. Now we're going to move on to the final section of this workshop, which is life is hard and that's okay. We're going to be, like I said, sharing some stories and my own personal story.
Earlier today, we talked about how mental health affects the Black community and the LGBT plus community at disproportional rates. Prior to that, we shared some stories of some pretty famous people, and some stories of some pretty regular people. None of them were Black. This is another reason why we don't seek the treatment we need when we have mental health symptoms. We feel alone. To live without reflection for so long might make you wonder if you even truly exist. I'm changing that. So for the remainder of this workshop, we're going to hear Some stories not often heard. Meet David.
I've seen more than a few black bodies. I will no longer consume the types of videos that are now all over social media. It's not for me to take that in. When it was just COVID that we were dealing with, I was like, man, I can't wait to get back to the office. And I miss that grind. I feel like it's harder to focus when I'm home. But with this, everyone knows what this is. I'm glad I'm not in the office right now.
Meet Jordan.
I just feel kind of heartbroken to have to be mourning people I don't really know, but it could be people I know. Just knowing that the virus itself was going to cause death, but that the neglect would compound that death and compound that pain. I went to undergrad in St. Louis. I was a sophomore during the Ferguson Uprising and tried to participate in the actions around that. That was a really formative part of my own growth and also my mental health journey. To reach such a huge national response again, not even 6 years later, thinking about the virus and how even by protesting to save our own lives, that is putting ourselves at risk, whether from the police or from the virus. It's just really hard. Even if after this pandemic is over, there's a vaccine, if Black people are still dying, going back to normal isn't good enough.
Meet Alante.
Sometimes I have to get off of social media and stop watching the news because it can be overwhelming. If you're constantly watching police harm somebody, it feels like they're attacking a family member and you can't do anything about it. And then, what makes it even more stressful is when you realize that you have to fight your hardest and turn the world upside down just to get justice. I realize that a lot of Black people have PTSD from being racially profiled and with brutality. We fight for laws to be changed or made, but ultimately, at the end of the day, if it's enforced by a racist structure, there will ultimately not be any change.
Meet me. I was a cute kid. If cute is a title we give kids. I seemed happy. I played the part, at least on the outside, for a little while. Someone once tweeted, "The only thing more exhausting than being depressed is pretending that you're not." I read that one day, and my God, I've never read anything truer.
Everybody thinks I'm okay, but don't nobody know the way I'm really feeling. Only heaven knows that nothing hurts more than falling. When you think you've been climbing, set me free.
I spent the majority of my life pretending, playing make-believe. I was a star in my own sitcom, and everyone was a scriptwriter except me. My mom and dad were the directors and producers. Don't get me wrong, it was a good show. I mean, my TV show got so good that I craved for it to be real. I needed to be this heterosexual male on his way to become a doctor of psychology, as indicated on the Bible that my parents gave me, inscribed with Dr. Justin K. Stevens. That was my gift on the way to college. But I desperately wanted to be this picture-perfect, happy-go-lucky, fantasy version of myself. Until I just couldn't fake it anymore. With mental health, much like physical health, when something is just a little off, your body will send you signals. For me, it was insomnia. Years went by where I couldn't sleep through the night, and when I finally did get some shut-eye, I suffered from frequent sleep paralysis. They say that you can survive anything as long as you see the end in sight. But that's the thing about depression. It's so insidious, and it compounds over time, making it impossible to ever see the end. It's like being in a cage without a key. And after years of feeling trapped, I sat in my car at Lake Ella in Tallahassee, Florida, and seriously considered driving my car straight to the bottom. At 4:45 a.m. on Thursday, February 7th, 1991, I took my first breath. And at 9:55 p.m. on Tuesday, February 7th, 2012, I dreamt of taking my last.
I faced every kind of pain. I've tried every other way. Honestly, I need a change. God knows I'm tired.
Growing up in a traditional military family, it was expected of me to be this macho man. Early on, I was taught to obey orders, to suppress any emotions, and to be a man. My dad would say, "Boys don't cry, suck it up." And my mom would hit me for putting my hand on my hip. We traveled around the world, and I met numerous other army brats who were trying to live up to the same expectations. Often when you tell someone you've started seeing a therapist, the most common response is, "A therapist? What do you have to be depressed about? You're fine." Men don't get depressed. As such, I haven't told my family about the things that brought me to such a dark place many years ago, or that I've been seeing a therapist for over a year. They don't know that I was bullied all throughout middle school and high school for being too feminine. They don't know that at the age of 16, in an attempt to meet someone who looked like me, I was raped the week before Christmas. They do not know that at the age of 21, I wanted to drown at the bottom of a lake. They do not know that from 22 to 25, I endured an emotionally abusive relationship. Sometimes I wish I felt the side effects, but there is no proof but proof. No mark but the good news, there is no bad news yet. Again. I wish I knew the nausea, its thick yell in the morning, pregnant proof that in you life swells. I know I'm not a mother, but I know what it is to nurse a thing you want to kill and can't. They do not know that I'm HIV positive, undetectable. They do not know that I still have days, though not nearly as often, where I just wish the sun didn't come up again. I want to live. I think I mean it. Took the pill even on days I thought I wouldn't survive myself. Gave my body a shot. Loved myself, at least that much. Thank you, me. Last year, around the time of my annual cancer check, I was going through a really rough time at work. I felt like I was given 200% of myself and it just wasn't good enough. A friend said to me, "Why don't you just let people know some of the things you're dealing with so they can really understand how great you are?" I'd asked myself that question a million times before, and I always told myself that I don't want to worry anyone. However, when this question was posed by a friend, I realized I didn't want to be pitied. I didn't want people to say, he has so much he's dealing with, and he's able to get great work done. I just wanted to be recognized for great work, and that be that. When it's all said and done, I don't even know my own native tongue. And if I can't speak myself, I can't think myself. And if I can't think myself, I can't be myself. But if I can't be myself, I will never know me. So tell me this. If I will never know me, how can you? I now know that talk saves lives. That don't mean you gotta tell everybody everything. You just need somebody that you can trust. I would not be here today if it wasn't for the amazing friends I've been blessed to have. The ones that text me just to say hi and see how I'm doing. The ones that say I love you just because. The ones who accept me for me and only me. You see, over time, life has blessed me with another type of family. A family that I got to choose. A family that chose me. I can tell them anything and they will not judge me or hold it against me. They accept me for me, and that's it.
My journey with mental health, it's ongoing. It's continuous. And like I mentioned earlier, I haven't shared much of my struggle with people outside of my closest friends. So I want to thank you all for being here today, because even as listeners, you guys are part of my healing. They say that the best way to learn is to teach it to someone. And I also believe that you shouldn't have to suffer in order to learn hard lessons. So I'm hoping that in me sharing my story, I hope that I can help somebody else learn a hard lesson without having to suffer themselves. My relationship with depression is very real. It's very complex. I have ups, I have downs, but it's all valid. If you or someone you know is in need of assistance, please reach out. Again, the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK. That's 1-800-273-8255. And I've been going through the comments and I see that you guys have also posted other resources in the chat. So please take a moment and check that out as well. I'd like to end with a quote from the most badass super chick ever, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, who once said, "The hardest thing in this world is to live in it. Be brave. Life is hard sometimes, and that is okay." Again, thank you everybody for attending today. You can connect with me on social media via the QR codes that are on the screen right now, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Feel free to post in the chat on the Out and Equal site. I'll be checking that throughout the remainder of the conference. And again, thank you very much. You can also download, there are some downloadables here with a graphic like this one. Life is hard and that's okay. Let's take this conversation to social media. Let's end this stigma. Let's make this conversation normal. Again, thank you.